Hello, 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 and welcome. Welcome to today's installment of Created for More, the podcast. I have someone that I've been dying to speak with, and it
Ah,
is going to be a real treat this episode. So just stay glued, get your coffee, get a biscuit. If you're driving, make sure you're extra tuned in. Well, focus on the road, but still be tuned in because we are going to have a right good old time today. I have got in the studios with me Mary Mosokwe Adeyemi, and she's passionate, it says on her bio here, about she's passionate, she's people oriented and a purpose driven woman who successfully walks the tightrope of business and social pursuits. Is that what we're about on this podcast? Yep. She's an award winning corporate and investment professional turned author, career strategist, and is the CEO of Visible Strengths Co., which is an academy that helps career professionals curate, transition into, and thrive in their purposeful, profitable, and progressive careers. Her bio goes on, but I will stop there and let her do us the honors of introducing herself. Yeah, Mary, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here today. And yeah,
it's great to
welcome.
be here, Tombra. I know we've had this on the agenda for some time, but I'm finally glad we're able to do it.
Mhm.
But no, I'm really excited. And hello,
Yeah.
everyone listening. I'm glad to be here sharing with you today.
Oh, love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Mary, I always start by asking people to introduce themselves because I don't think anything can do it justice. Like, when you talk about yourself,
hmm
who is Mary? What is the essence of you?
Yeah.
Go for
Wow.
it.
Wow. I mean, my bio kind of says, and I think I try to keep my bio like really as authentic as can be. But it's really those things I said, the three words that really describe me are just purpose, passion, people. And that's just really how I live my life. And in various facets and spaces that I operate in, I'm someone who doesn't limit themselves. I'm like a lot of hyphens. And so I don't limit myself to any one space. And I'm always just grateful to have the opportunity to go into different spaces and just be of value. So today you might find me talking about careers. Tomorrow you might find me talking about investing. The next day you might find me preaching in a church. The day after you
Mhm.
find me working out in the gym and training someone in, doing all types of things. And so I think like we're extremely multifaceted and we're really just called to be more, do more, and just really kind of live sort of this full, rich, wealthy life. And that's just sort of
Mhm.
really what I'm all about. I'm all about new experiences, trying new things, and really at the phase where I'm shaking off any fears as it pertains to making big changes. So I'm definitely a bit of a creature of comfort, and also a
Mhm.
creature of just what's the word, like when I like stuff, and sometimes I might even end up staying in spaces that I really shouldn't be for too long. But now I'm kind of trying to learn to be more dynamic and just,
Yeah.
just move when God says move,
Mhm.
and just be ready to shake off, old identities to embrace new ones, really. So that's kind of the way I would describe me in general, but also the phase that I'm in right now. It's just sort of this, intentional growth, and just living ambition with contentment, really. So trying to grow, trying to change, trying to do everything, but still being at peace whilst doing it.
Yes, that is so, so, so key. And I'm really, really glad you highlighted that. The fact that you can still be evolving and be at peace
Mm,
because people feel that it's either or.
mm,
Evolving, it means that, just everywhere and I can't be at peace until I get
get
the
to,
next thing.
yeah.
I often talk about how we can be so fixated on doing and evolving that we forget to actually be content in
Mm-hmm.
um, our current phase of life.
Mm.
And so, how did you find that balance? Like, how did you find that it was okay? Like, when did it occur to you that this is all right, to be wanting more and
Mm-hmm.
still be content? It's a really, really delicate
Yeah.
balance that a lot of people can't really find. They feel like if I want more, that means I'm not happy.
I don't know that I can really pinpoint a moment, but I would say just the way I grew up. I grew up with parents who were big sort of service people, and I think when you grow up like that, you kind of grow up in an environment where what was modeled for me was the ability to let go of, you know, what might seem to be the more the pizzazz, to let go of the pizzazz to really pursue your own passion and your own purpose. And so I grew up with parents that were extremely smart, ambitious, could do anything, and, you know, pretty much live in any way they wanted to, but they chose to work, you know, with the civil service, or my mom was a nurse, and just, you know, they were just very big on service. And so I sort of learned that there is a way to live for yourself and for your own sort of specific calling. And, you know, so I kind of grew up with that system. And my mom is like super strict, you know, especially when we were growing up. She was super, and she was always reminding us about, you know, how they came from nothing. And even though we sort of had like a lot of privileges growing up, she was always like, hey, this is how she grew up. You know, I grew up in a house with 8 kids and 1 room and all those types of things. So I think we grew up, you know, we grew up very privileged, but I think we grew up with a real understanding of humble beginnings. But also just with the sense that everybody's journey was different, and you just needed to be okay with that, you know. And I think more so maybe in the last 5 years, you know, my dad passed away in 2019, in January 2019, and I think that's the closest person to me that's actually passed away in all of my life. But I think that really brought to bear like this mortality. You know, there were lots of things that on balance, you know, one might say, oh, you know, daddy could have done this and daddy could have done that. But, you know, in hindsight, I realized he did all the stuff that he was supposed to do, and everything else is like, he's left it for us now, you know. And you realize like you don't take anything away. You don't take, you know, for a year, the pen he used the day before he died was sitting on the table, you know, and it's just a reminder, like nothing goes with you. You get off the bus. And so you want to get off the bus knowing that you've lived the life that you were put on the bus to live. And so I think I've just been so much more aware of that. Just like, hey, you're taking nothing. And you just live your life, and, you know, anything, you know, just at the click of a finger, anything can happen, you know. And even just again over the last 5 years, like I've had, you know, medical emergencies that literally I had to write a will. My mom has had a bad fall where we're like, oh, we almost lost her. And it just brings to bear just the fact that everything could be perfect right now, and the next moment you're just snatched away. And so I think for me, I just realized I don't want to be snatched away when I haven't actually done the thing that I know, you know. So I think I got maybe a little bit more afraid, like, hey, just, you know, learn to breathe and be at peace and be in tune with not just the movement, but just the seasons, you know, the seasons that you're in, you know. So there's all the things that God is asking me to do this, there's all of that. But what season am I in, and what am I learning? How am I growing? How am I becoming a better person? So I think, yeah, so definitely not one thing, but I would just say, you know, it has a lot to do with upbringing and what was modeled for me. But definitely, I think just my increased awareness of mortality, especially in the last few years, and even with COVID, like we've all seen just, you know, here today, gone tomorrow. So you just, you know, choose to live for yourself and just choose peace. Like, you know.
It's a really, really interesting one. You know, this, because what I hear you say is, you know, living with a sense of, I'll call it urgency, not urgency as a pace, more urgency as in, you know, you're here for something, as you say, you put it so beautifully, you get off the bus And I find that a lot of times we as people, we remember that in the moment, like, oh yes, you go to church and they talk, hey, and we're all hyped. But then it's almost like we just move into the day-to-day hustle. And sometimes for a lot of people, even myself sometimes included, and I have to really, really like snap back and remember, look, you're not taking anything with you.
Yeah.
You have to live every single day in a state that if it were my last day, I would be proud. I would say, yes, I lived well, I did well, and whatnot. I think it's a really, really important one that people need to think about.
And it's not easy, It's not easy.
What were you saying? It's not easy. We're human beings.
Life is in front of you. The news is telling you all the things, peer pressure. You're looking at everything. Your bills are speaking to you. You're going to work every single day. There is a custom and a tradition. And I think sometimes actually, as much as I've started realizing even more so lately, how the way of the kingdom is peace, but actually the way of the world is war. It's not. It's an intentional separation. So it's so weird. Like a lot of us, we all lean into the idea, like there's peace in God, but we don't actually realize that the world we're living in is built to be chaotic. And so you almost have to be so much more intentional to live peacefully, like to live without anger, to live without entitlement, to live without being upset about things, and to live without complaining at every turn. So every time I say, especially to the women that I work with, I'm always like, when they say, oh, there's a problem, I'm like, what are you doing about it? Like, I don't want to, there's no point talking about the problem if you're not going to participate in being the solution, right? So that's kind of the journey to peace, is rather than sitting down and just thinking, okay, woe betide me, I'm on the receiving end of a lot of stuff, is what is my participation in all of this right now? Because that's what you can control. You can't control everything else, So it's not, that peaceful state is not easy at all. Yeah.
No, it's a really, really, really important one. It's very, very. You have to have a lot of intentionality attached to it to be able to do it, because, as you say, the context can be really, really challenging to navigate. So, in terms of when you were, there was just something you when you spoke about just how you were raised and the way your parents instilled within you just those values of, in a sense, I hear contentment, and doing the things you need to do at the time that you need to do them. Do you feel like the things that you are doing now, because I know I see this broad spectrum, and I was saying to you when we started speaking, like, for me, you are like a feast. I love having conversations, and when I have conversations with people I term multifaceted or multi-potentialites, I love it, because for me it is an absolute dream. I love people who are giving life on every corner and are doing, did you at any point, when you started expressing, and here's my question, when you started expressing and started to do all these things, did you at any point feel as if, it might be too much, it might be perceived as too much, it might be, should I shrink a little? Because it's almost like the culture of the world teaches us that, you can go thus far but no further. Because there is a limit on what you can be, A, as a person, B, as a woman, C, as a black woman, D, as a Christian black woman. So I just want you to talk us through just that, your journey of evolution, and how it has been for you to just unravel these layers
Yeah.
that we see today. So, interrupting the podcast real quickly to bring you a short message from our sponsors, Linkage Assurance PLC. They're an insurance organization based in Nigeria that offer insurance services across a wide number of sectors. You want to check them out. They offer a great top-notch service. So they're particularly relevant for people who have business interests in Nigeria. So a product I would like to highlight today is from their motor insurance category. So in their motor insurance category, there's a third-party insurance plus product that provides insurance covers for the third-party vehicle if you were ever in an accident, as well as cover for your own vehicle as well at really affordable rates. You want to check them out and tell them that we sent you. Thank you very much. Now back to the podcast.
No, I mean, wow. Yes, to the question around having to shrink. Yes, I actually posted something today about that. Like, there've just been moments of like real shrinkage where I've just been like, you know, you just a little bit of a shadow of yourself at different points and for different reasons. But I probably would say, you know, again, just back to the way, like, my dad is an intellectual. And so for him, grooming, education, and curiosity was one of the big lessons that I learned. Was like, I used to read Reader's Digest at 8 and 9. Yeah. So we had a lot of, you know, he literally groomed curiosity, like, you know, asking why and being curious about the most random stuff. Like, it wasn't about school. It was about just knowing, just, you know, my dad was always talking about general affairs, you know. So now we talk about general affairs. And he would sit and he would read all types of things. And so similarly, I kind of picked that up. I'm a big reader of all kinds of things. I would say even today, I rarely read fiction. Rarely. I would really read like non-fiction. I'll read magazines. I'll read the news. I'll get on the internet. Like, I'm just all about what's going on in the world. But I started doing that as a child. And then also, one of the things that I benefited from was I was never held back. And so even as I was moving even much faster ahead, my parents never kind of said, oh, you know, you're a bit too young to go to this class, like, stay back. So when I started high school, I started high school at age 8. So I was the youngest in my class by miles till today. So my peers right now are at least a couple of years, or at least a year, 18 months to 2 years older than I am. And so I started at 8, and there are other parents who would have said, oh, you can't go to secondary school until you're 10 or something like that. And in particular in the UK, they have like those age caps. But in Nigeria, you kind of just, at least in my day, you kind of just moved on. And so I was always able to, I was never capped in terms of just what I wanted to do and just interests and things like that. So I think I'd always been very wide-eyed and bushy-tailed about learning and whatever was out there. And so in doing that, I think what you naturally then get is just a lot of interest. So at one point I was like, I don't even know what I want to do. I'm just interested in so many different things. And to the point that I just had to just pick one. And even the pick one was a little bit weird, because when I got to university, I had one of these weird degrees where I was majoring in 2 things and minoring in 4 things. Like, I was just sort of all over the place. So like, I was always doing exams, I was always studying, I was always writing essays. So I just could not figure out what I wanted to do. And I was, you know, my degree was, I had a double major in accounting and finance, but I also did economic statistics and law. So I was just like,
what?
Yeah, so I had like, and I also had like, yeah, so I was very mathsy. I liked science to a certain degree, but I liked business stuff probably more than anything else. But I was always interested in just the law and how, you know, so I studied law in school. So I was just very curious about stuff. And I think it was maybe when I was about to graduate that I was like, okay, let me just pick banking. But it wasn't really like there was a thing. I just knew like, okay, I did quite well with this in school. Let's just see where it goes. And I think it was just one of those things. But even when I started when I started working in banking, I realized just how interested I was in just people development. My dad, used to train, he worked for the civil service, and then he used to train executives. And so I think I just caught that sort of teaching bug from him. And before I knew it, I started basically doing the same thing in my workplace. And then built kind of a second career alongside like my finance background. So I guess, the short of the story is just, if you're brought up as somebody who's just curious, who's always looking, there's nothing like curiosity killed the cat in my household. It was like, yeah, ask questions, be curious, and I grew up as the only girl amongst a number of boys. And so, but I had like a huge influence with my dad, just in terms of just being yourself, asking questions, don't be shy. He always asked for my opinions. I always felt like my opinion mattered, and just things like that. So I think upbringing for me is probably one of the biggest privileges that I've had. And then it just shows up. It shows up like in my adulthood. But when you get to work, of course, the realities of that, you get hit by that. When people start telling you that perhaps your access is a little more limited because you're female or you're black, it just kind of makes you pause for a minute. But this is where I always say, like, I think, nurture has a lot more to do with it than nature. Being black or being female, we're not a monolith. It doesn't necessarily mean you're brought up the same. And I think if you are brought up with intention, and maybe this is for the parents out there, the more you bring your kids up with intention, they're going to show up differently in the world. It's not about, yes, the world is not going to necessarily be kind to women or to people of color, but you can raise resilient kids who understand the value of their voice and can share it. Because that's who will show up when they're older. They're not going to shrink back because they've never had to shrink before. And so they're unfamiliar with being small. And so, and then when they get to wherever they are, they're just going to show up as who they are. And even when they hit obstacles, there's a resilience from inside that pops out. And so, so I think that for me is sort of how I, but there've always been times, you meet someone, or, you have maybe a negative experience that forces you to, we all do that. We all have the days where we come back home and go under the duvet and we're like, oh, we're done, I'm done. But, again, it's just that thing that reminds you, like, hey, wake up, try again, go again, speak up again, keep on doing it, because, why not?
What's interesting about, the story you're sharing about your experience on how you were brought up, it's so different from mine, in the sense that I didn't feel necessarily empowered when I was growing up. I was told to be visible but say nothing. Not told to necessarily, but that was just the culture of the times and the environment where I was raised in and the context I was in. And it's interesting that it took a while. I could completely relate to what you said there when you said when you teach your children to know who they are, they can go into the workplace and they can express themselves with courage and speak their minds and so on. It was a complete opposite for me. Went in, I didn't know who I was. I just wanted to be whoever people around me told me it was okay to be. Not even what it should be, it was okay to be. I was there was people pleasing, there was all this stuff, and it was as I started my journey of self-discovery that I started to find myself and my voice, and which has then led to what I'm doing now. And the reason why I think it's important to point out is that there may be people listening who feel, I didn't have the background that Mary had. So it's, I didn't have that, so it means I can't be, I can't amount to much. I don't feel like I have that privilege, so, my own is whatever. I think you can create the life you want, and it's a slogan I have on my WhatsApp that I think is so powerful, because every time I feel as if, I'm not where, if there's something, if I hit a block or I feel some sort of constraint around anything that I'm doing, I always say to myself, you can create the life you want. We're done with the age of blaming parents, blaming this, you didn't give me that, blaming I don't have this opportunity. You can create the life you want. So I thought it was important
No,
to
yeah, some
just
balance.
matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I would like to you to continue was that thread of conversation where you were talking about you were in corporate career, you were also doing all these things of the side, and you were kind of doing, building stuff in parallel. I mean, how have you evolved to where you are now? Because I know that at some point, I think recently you said you've given up
Corporate.
you gave up your corporate career. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like, how what's that evolution like? Would be good to,
I don't know if
yeah, for
I've
you to
given
share.
it up. I'm still, myself and God are having conversations about that one. But,
Sorry, let me rephrase it. You walked out of
I walked
one.
out at
Let
least.
Yeah, yeah.
Figure
Let's
out
let's let's put it that. Yeah.
no, I think it, but also kind of a similar, even still following the thread of what you were saying. So as much as I had this obviously like, really awesome background, I felt very empowered, and I was party to a lot of the choices, I was still subject to the thing that says, be an accountant, be a lawyer, be an architect, be this, be that. There were sometimes limitations around me
Yeah.
exploring my,
Societal norm.
yes. So there was
Yeah.
still like the
Yeah.
box that, so there was a box, it might have been a bigger box, but it was a box no less. And so going into a career, like I was always someone who would teach from as young as I could remember. I was always someone who would do like, is it I'm doing math, I'm the commander of the match past, or I'm, a prefect in school, or there was always something about me instructing others or showing others the way to do something. So I knew like that was sort of somewhere in between, but there was nobody telling me, oh, maybe you should be a teacher because, hey, teachers don't earn money. No, it wasn't part of the list of career options available. So I didn't even know what was possible, or it just wasn't a thing really. And so I went on and did this whole finance thing, and it was good, and I was good at it, so there was nothing wrong. It wasn't broke, so I didn't ever really try to fix it. I just kind of stuck to doing it. But I think one of the things that I was then able to do was kind of basically add this other thing to it. I was like, okay, I really, really like doing career development stuff. So I would volunteer for, I'll volunteer internally to run programs or create programs, and do interviews and recruitment drives. And it just really started as something that was like, oh, every summer I would just be part of the team that would do this thing, and it was like cool and it was fun, and I thought, okay, this is nice. And then a few years later, I was then part of like a really key spearheading group to start a really revolutionary program at the firm that I was in. It was called the Africa Program, and we were hiring directly for the first time from the African region directly into roles in London. And they were, at the time, no other firm had been doing something like that, and I thought it was super cool. And so we created the program, myself and maybe I think we're 7 of us or so in different divisions in the bank, and we just kind of came together and we just made this thing happen. And that was the first time I was like, okay, like the elation in my heart. That was when I was like, okay, there's something here. I definitely don't feel like this in my everyday, And this kind of happened maybe 7 years into work, where I was already feeling, you get the 7-year itch. People talk about that. I was already feeling a bit like unsettled. And I was desperate to feel this sense of purpose. And so this came along, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is really cool. But even at the time, I never thought it would be like a career, like a second thing I'll be doing. Like I look back and I just think, whoa, I can't even believe I'm here. And so that was really how I started immersing myself in people development a lot more than the average person. And so I would travel with the HR teams, we would do like stuff together, and I would still do my functional role, but I would literally give up all of my spare time to do this stuff. And so I always say, like, purpose calls out to you, it's literally yelling at you. The question is whether you're stopping to pay attention to listen, right? So I think that was just one of those things where I was just interested in doing more learning, without even really any agenda. I didn't think that I was going to be doing any of this. And I think maybe it was about 3 years later, that was when I was like, okay, I have an idea. And that was kind of how it started. I was like, oh, okay, I have this idea. I always get these, like, and I was probably 10 years into my career at the time. And I was like, okay, I always get these, younger women approach me about, life in banking and just navigating corporate careers. I used to do a lot of panel events and things like that. There were not many people who looked like me that were sort of at the level that I was at the time. And so it was just like, okay, I like sharing the stuff. I like the feeling of encouraging and letting them know, like, just keep going. It might feel hard, keep going, helping them overcome obstacles, avoid mistakes, just really give them the benefit of my experience. I didn't even think like I just thought it was just me sharing my stories. It wasn't anything. I didn't have any frameworks. I didn't have anything. I just thought, I was like, I'm just going to share my experience and hopefully you can learn something from it. And so at this point I kind of said, oh, I have an idea. People are always asking me all these questions, but I realized that the questions are all the same. Let me start doing these group sessions and just see who's interested. So instead of me, it was almost like an efficiency thing. It's like, I can't do the one-on-one questions. Let's just come to a group. And before I knew it, I had a waiting list of like 200 plus women. And we were running these sessions at like 12 women at a time, something like that, because I was conscious about confidentiality and I was conscious about people just feeling like they were not in a room with a bunch of people and they actually felt heard. And that was just really how I started like my group programs. And I ran it for free for a season. It was just like a thing I just wanted to do. And then as I, every time I would go, I'm like, okay, let me write that down. And it just became like a fact-finding thing, almost like a research portal. And then slowly but surely, like a couple of years in, I realized, oh, okay, maybe there's some structure here. There's some things that are repeating themselves. There's some, okay, I think people have a issue with strengths. People don't know how to discover their strengths. They don't really know how to figure that out. They don't know how to, discover purpose and pick careers that, aligns with their strengths, their value, and their passions. Okay, that's one thing. People don't know how to do stuff about goal setting. That's always an issue. Okay, cool. Career advancement is an issue. Okay, visibility is an issue. I think I just kind of started writing it down. And then I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should just create a course or something and actually like maybe make it more structured. Just make these meetings more structured. And that was kind of really how I created my first course. And we're still running that course till now. But that was really like the first time I was like, okay, there's something here. This is awesome. And then I also, alongside that, I started Visibility, the talk show, just again because I felt that women like me needed to see more women like me and what they were doing, because we felt as though, well, I will speak for myself, I felt as though certain layers of success were unattainable because I just had not seen it. I felt like, okay, as I'm getting more senior in my career, I didn't see any MDs who looked like me. I didn't see any like directors who looked like me. So I was already thinking in my mind, can I even achieve that? Is it possible? Was it, is it a gateway that I can access? And I just thought like, it would be helpful to have conversations with people, and then it just sort of became, okay, let's film the conversations, and I just started that way. And it grew and it took legs. And so basically here I was working full time, but then now, doing this talk show, then running these courses, and it just sort of took on a life of its own. And then I got more, I was still growing my career, getting more senior, doing other stuff. I moved roles at the time, and then we hit COVID. And I think that was really where the game changed because COVID gave me time. So I really then sat down and said, okay, right. Okay. It gave me some time to think. It gave me some time to really process. A lot of people were very open to their personal development in that time. It was also like, I think other people also had time to do it. And so we just ramped up on the program. I just took everything, sat down, relaunched, put a team together around my work, and we just built curriculum. Basically, just built curriculum around it, and just started running the programs with a vengeance, you know. And you hear testimonials, you see people crying during the session. I had one girl who, a young woman who, she finished my program, and one of the scariest things that can happen with a coach, and I guess I'm just getting more comfortable calling myself that, is when you run a program and then you actually see the transformation happening, and it's actually scary, because you're like, whoa, hold on, you know. But this, she resigned her role, and I'm like, girl,
wow.
I can't feed you.
Girl, you sure?
You sure? Please, you know. But she resigned her role. She was so convicted that she was in the wrong place, and she resigned her role. She went back to do a master's, and now she's fully in the career like she wants to be in, you know. But it, you know, what my program was the starting point, and then she went on this like 3-year journey by herself, because again, I'm not the one studying for her, right? And I supported her through that whole 3 years. Would have calls regularly and things like that. There were calls where we would just cry. There were calls where we were like, okay, this is a win, let's be strategic, let's move forward. But you know, I look back and I just think, okay, the woman who came to me 3 years ago is definitely not the professional that is at work, who's happy, who's content, who feels purposeful, who is building a career that, you know, serves her, puts food on her table, provides for her, but also where she's able to progress and advance in a way that she would never have been able to do in her previous role. And it's not everyone that I work with that moves. Some people actually just find a lot more confidence in what they're doing. They understand how to navigate the workplace a little bit more. And I think when I started hearing these testimonials, I think that's when it started feeling very much like ministry. It started feeling different. I think if I hadn't done it and I hadn't really seen the impact, I wouldn't have understood it. But once I did, and it was this, I guess it was maybe just, again, it's this curiosity thing. I was curious about maybe if I should just It was just all about, let me just try this. Let's see how it goes. There was no intent behind it. There was no money making scheme. There was no nothing. It was just, let's just see and do it. And when I started hearing the testimonials, when I started seeing like the impact, people saying, oh, you know, I 3x my salary after working with you. You know, I changed careers. I was promoted 3 months, 6 months, 1 year in advance, you know, and I'm really seeing progression, and I see that transformation happening. Then I'm like, okay, this is my purpose. And I think that was when I was like, whoa, okay, wild. Yeah, okay, this is amazing. Oh, okay. Yeah, and I think it just hit me, you know, but it took like what really was like maybe a 10-year journey of just doing and just trying and just adding value and just being curious about it, and not really like thinking, oh, this is the thing, you know. I think sometimes we bash our heads on this like wall of, I want to be my purpose. We're slamming our heads into it. But you know, purpose comes in the wild somewhat. You know, a friend of mine said to me, purpose is the thing that jumps at you when you are like on the go. You know, it's not something that, you know, you have to be doing stuff. You have to be trying new things. You have to be, you know, and then you would now realize, okay. So it's not going to be something you're going to necessarily find out when you're static. Some of us think we're going to find purpose. Okay, we're going to read the Bible, and one day God is going to be like, my daughter, this is your, you know.
My daughter. This is
you know, and it's just not going to happen that well. You may, you know, God works in so many different ways, but most likely will not, you know, because in the end, even if you think about the parable of the talents, it was really all about God saying, before I give you this, you know, the keys to the kingdom, let me see what you're going to do with the talents. Are you going to bury it, or are you going to multiply it? So a lot of times we're waiting for the, oh my God, this is it. And God is like, no, I want to see what you're going to do. And in the doing, you would
Mm.
find your own place. And so yeah, so it started growing. And
Mm.
next thing I know, I'm writing a book. I'm just as shocked as everybody else. And all of this is like it's
Ah!
happening to me, and I'm literally like, what is going on? Um,
What?
so
I
I'm
love
so
it.
I'm writing a book, and I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm talking at schools, and I have corporate clients, and this whole thing is happening. And it got to a point where I was like, I actually now can't manage this thing with my full-time role. It's I don't have enough hours in the day. So what are we gonna do? And of course, I had to battle with identity. I've always been a banker. I've never, this is where all the things that we talk about, like, even though I had all this freedom of like, okay, yeah, you can be everything you can be, da da da, your mind tells you, like, so who are you gonna be if you're not the finance person? Or, that was a big thing. I had to grapple with the fear of irrelevance. I had to grapple with the fear of just, no, like being a no-name brand, shall I say? I don't have the backing of a Goldman Sachs or this or that. Like but I have God's backing. So I have to now be comfortable in that. Like, what
Ooh,
is the
okay.
brand name I'm going to own? And I'm like, I'm owning that I'm God's child, and I'm out here in these streets operating in purpose, And it's not
Operating
an
in
easy thing.
purpose.
It's
I
like every day you
love
need to
it.
renew. Have to renew my mind about that. Like, it's every day I have to be like, girl, yep, there's no name brand right now, but you are in purpose, and there's no better place for you to be. So yeah, very, very long-winded answer, but it's just, I guess, yeah,
Oh, wow, this is so
yeah.
brilliant. Brilliant. I think as we were speaking there, I was just in my mind, I was just like, wow. So Mary was doing her thing there, not even knowing that there was some other girl, Tombra, walking in an absolute, completely
Yeah.
parallel seasons. It just felt like you were talking
You.
about me. I was like, what? What? Like, what?
I love it.
So whereas mine wasn't as much as having an identity rooted necessarily within
Mm,
corporate space. I've always been in corporate. I've been in banking. I used to be working in investment banking, but I knew that wasn't for me. I think so. It's different. It's like we have similar stories,
different.
but almost like the the inverse. The inverse, but there's
Right.
similarities. And I felt like it wasn't really for me. But and then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I just felt like for me it was my opportunity to redefine my
Mm,
life. And I basically grabbed it with both hands, legs, everything I could grab with. And then out of that came just everything I've been doing since. And I released a podcast the other day, and I was like, what 3 years of walking in purpose
I saw
has
that.
taught me.
Yeah,
And
I was like,
everyone's like, what
oof. Yeah.
3 years? Yeah, yeah. And it was like, like it literally even got someone like hunted me down. Oh, like you have to, I can't believe you've done what you've done in just three
Mm,
years. And I was like, yeah, it is possible because once you get that clarity and you find that fire, and that's why I was asking you that question. That you know, the question I wanted to ask, which you answered and I
mm,
didn't ask, was where was that
yeah.
moment for you where you realized that what, this is a thing, this is my thing, and this is the thing I
Yeah.
will do. Do you understand? There are three components to that, and then
Yeah.
pursue it with all of your heart
Mm,
and your soul. And it's so beautiful. And I totally get you about that
mm,
transformation. When you start to see people that you're working with just evolve and they're doing all these things, and you're like, wait, you mean if I didn't rise,
yes.
if I did
Yeah. Yeah.
people would
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
stuck, unable to get to their next
Yeah.
level. So that is complete. That is an indictment for somebody who is listening to this podcast. Um, there are people that are just they are
You.
so dependent on you. Their lives are completely
Yeah.
hinged on you standing, you taking your place and doing your thing. The other thing you touched on that I thought was just really, really cool and I just wanted to, just layer upon it was you talked about this parable of the talents, and how God was just like, the master was just like, hey, go, let me see what you do before I give you the keys to the kingdom. When I speak about that parable of the talent, I actually speak about it in the sense of I feel like what did the master use to make the determination of how many people will get what number of talents? It had to have been something they'd done in their past, something that they'd done, how they'd shown up, that gave him that, assurance that, you know what, this one, you look like a 5 talent type of person to me.
Yep.
You look like a 5 talent type of person to me. You look like a 1 talent one. So it's sometimes we are waiting to be given the opportunity to then begin to show. But even where you are in that place, there's stuff that you can do, and there are things that the determinations that God is making on you where you are right now. That if you're not living to that expectation, you're not going to get that next level, next thing. You're not going to get the talents that allows you expressed and say, okay, you know what, I've been given 5 and here's 10, right? You're not going to get even that opportunity. You'll be the one that's giving 1.
So spot on.
So
Yeah. Wow, I'm gonna go and read that
I
passage again
I
with
think
that insight. Yes. Because frankly, and that's the thing, is people think it's all about outcomes, but God is so much more concerned about character and process, such that he doesn't actually care about the outcome, but because even the Bible talks about I can raise worshippers with stones. God can do anything with anything. He doesn't actually really need us. So we have the privilege of being able to access sort of and be part of his own story and what he's doing. But it's amazing, like he's just more particular about character and being the person who can carry the purpose. I think, a lot of times we're like looking for this purpose thing, right? But you're not actually the person that can carry it. But what are you doing in the interim to shore up your lines, right? Wow, I'm gonna go and study that scripture again, like just with that insight. That's really like, okay, yes, I never thought about it like that. And then next thing, I'm gonna put it in my Instagram. I'm a 5 talent girl.
I'm a 5 talent type of girl.
Are you a 1 talent
It's
girl or
true.
a 10 talent girl?
Yeah, 1 talent girl. Because that 1 talent person is looking at all these people, and they're looking at Mary, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Mary's cool. She's got 5 talents. She's got all these things. She's got many tricks that she can." No, there was something that made Mary worthy of those talents. There was a way that she was operating when she didn't
Come
have
on.
5 talents. That made Yes, there was a way that you were operating that made you worthy to say, okay, you, because think about it, why did they say you have 5? Why there must have been something. When the master had sent people to the field, there's a different way that the 5 talent person
Now.
worked, as opposed to there was something else that they brought to the table that was special. That the master was not going to
Come
waste his
on.
investment. I will give the highest. I will give the highest and my best to the one who I know will give me the
Come
maximum
on.
return. And true to it, the 1 talent guy, he did. I wanted to make sure I don't want to lose. And yeah, because you've already shown me that you're the kind of person who would lose it. So don't worry about it. That's so
Oh,
to really, really say that
the
where you
tricky part
are,
was the fact that the
go on.
person that had 5 talents, I think, ended up walking away with like 9 or something like that, because when he came back, he then distributed all of it to the guy with 5. So it was like he took the one with 1 and said, "Oh, actually, I'm going to take your 1. I'm
Yes.
going to give it to this guy who had already doubled his 5." So that guy walked away with now 11, became an 11 talent guy. So yeah, it's wild.
And, and that speaks of volumes to this cycle that is perpetrated in a lot of lives. Like, you feel like, you know what, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. And you're pussyfooting, you are just there, you're stuck. Meanwhile, the more you do it, I'm telling you that what you have that you know that you say you don't know is literally being taken
Yep.
away and given to somebody else.
1000%. Because whether you're involved with it or not, the work is gonna be done. God is not gonna leave his children waiting.
Sis,
God is not gonna. So if I didn't do what I'm supposed to do, that girl is actually not gonna be stuck because she's a child of God too. So it would just have moved on to somebody else who wanted to be available, right? You know, once the jars of oil finish, the oil ceased. Or once the jars finish, the oil ceased. That's it. The more you have capacity, you can continue to pour out. But beyond that, that's it. There's no stories. It's wild. It's wild. Like, and that's the thing.
You are completely again on my own show because I'm about to go all gangster here. Like, Mary, how damn!
Where's the tithe and offering bucket? Because we need to Venmo some offerings virtually. But listen, it's wild. No, it's crazy because when you're living in this space, do you know there's no feeling that's more acute for you than just humility. It's weird because you're just like, I don't even know what's going on. I have no idea. Like, because you genuinely feel like, why are you doing that? Why you like? I just told you something. Why are you actually doing it? I don't know anything. You're actually like, stop. When you see people take these moves and you realize, whoa, your voice, like what the impact that God has put for the group of people that you're called to, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Hear my voice. That is so
amazing.
True. You know, there are people that you have been called to that will hear your voice. They're literally hearing. As you were just speaking there was something else that came to my mind that I think it's important to just touch on. You know, how a lot of times people are watching, you know, they're looking at all these people doing great things and they're just, you know, sometimes they almost even feel bad because they go on their social media and all these people. I just keep using you because you're so fabulous. You know, Mary's, you know, oh my God, there she goes again, writing a book. And they don't feel like in their heart of hearts, it's jealousy. They're like, oh, I feel like a little bit sad, you know. But I always say that, look, a lot of times when you look and you see people doing things and then you feel some type of way about it, you need to start to dig into why you feel that way. And a lot of times the root of that feeling might be that you have the seed, that same seed in you that is recognizing and identifying, bearing witness and saying, this is me. So I just want to challenge you. It's true. Because a lot of times when you look at somebody doing something, the things that you will be attracted to, the things that, you know, are things that are familiar to you. It's like you haven't lived it, but you can live it. There is something on the inside of you that bears witness that says, hey, listen what this girl's doing. So I just want to challenge, you know, whoever is listening, someone who's listening, to say, the next time you feel like it's jealousy, what if it's not jealousy? What if it's your spirit? Not even jealousy. Maybe it's you just feeling like some type of way. Dig into it. There might be a seed of that greatness that you also carry that you want to explore further, and that's what's calling out. Oh my gosh, you've turned this into
message. It's I'm like, it's okay. As I said, it's ministry. Like for me, it's ministry, and just, you know, a lot lately, God has been telling me, you know, don't center everything you're doing around me. I'm not an addition or by the way. Like, I'm actually central to the work that you're doing. So like now I pray with my clients. Like we pray, we come together. Those are things like, you know, normally you're afraid of stuff like that. You're like, is it, you know, but I'll say to them, hey, this is what I believe. So a lot of people, and then what you realize is, as you said, my sheep know my voice. people who come to me are attracted to me because of my faith. They would choose me to work with over anyone else because of my faith and because of my conviction, and because I'm ready and willing and open to and be able to say, hey, because sometimes the problem cannot be psychologically fixed, right? The problem is, listen, we need to pray through this. If you're feeling anxious, we need to call on the God that doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but a power of love and a sound mind. I don't know anything else, so I beg. So sometimes you think, okay, hey, I'm a career coach, I'm a career strategist. I mean, I'm career, but a big part of my ministry really is, yeah, your career, but you're not going to do this career thing by yourself. So I'm going to teach you I'm going to teach you strengths and value and visibility and how to blend all of that to build your purposeful, profitable, and progressive career. But I'm going to pray over you because I don't know any other way. Because once I'm done, let the Spirit of God take over and show you that the way to go and all of that. And that's when you realize, like, this is not work. This is purpose. That's what it feels like. It's ministry. It's ministry. It's different from just like, showing up, cashing a check, and you still cash your checks, but you still, there's a different energy that you show up with. And you realize actually that because his ministry is always under attack. So even you're going to feel, I feel that fear every single day, despite all of the stories and the testimonials and whatever. I wake up every day and I'm like, hey God.
I think it's so important that you said that. God bless you for saying that, because people think that anyone who is doing stuff, they have it all together. Literally.
I don't know. I listen to Pastor Mildred and she's like, the way God is just doing his own stuff. I'm like, listen, I understand that thought, because it's just like you wake up every day and just say, hey God, like yesterday I was supposed to coach someone and I genuinely was walking in and I thought, I don't know what I'm about to tell this girl, And then I was reading the scripture in Matthew and there was a part where it says, I think it might be Matthew 7 or 8. And there was a part where it was saying, like, and Jesus was sending his disciples into the world. And he was telling them basically, greet everybody with love. If they chase you out, dust your shoes. All he was doing, he kind of explained, like, say, I'm sending you into the world, but this is how, if they receive you, stay. If they don't receive you, go. And there was a part where he then said, they're going to take you to the synagogues or the high priests and the stuff and basically jail you and all of that. Don't worry about what you're about to say. When in that moment, I will give you what to say. And I just remember, like, I was in the shower when I was listening to it, and I was like, oh my God, that's my word. This is how I'm showing up today. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I literally just read that scripture and thought to myself, this is God telling me, don't worry, in that moment, I'm going to show you what you're going to do. And I just had the rest of the day, I was like, okay. So I still came to my notes. I looked over her file. I, planned my sort of session notes and everything. But I went from, I don't know what I'm going to say to this girl, to us having a 2-hour, we're booked in for a 1-hour session, and I'm having a 2-hour session. A 2-hour session, and then booking her for a bigger package. And this is me that I woke up that day going, listen, I don't know, God, I beg. I don't know what to say to this girl, but literally just that sense of like, because that's just, so now it's like, this is how I run my thing every single day is, I have no confidence that I'm going to know exactly what I'm going to say, but I trust God. Because ultimately it's more about his daughters than me. I'm just the vessel, so.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Look, Mary, we have touched on so much, but I cannot let you go. I cannot let the boss of Visible Strengths come up in the studio and not speak on strengths. And I think we've touched on it almost like, we skirted around it a little bit, but Visible Strengths, let's talk about your book, why it's important, for our strengths to A, be identified, B, be visible. Does everyone have strengths? So in this cocktail of questions, please make meaning and answer.
Yeah, so I mean, look, the essence of visible strengths is really just about saying we show up best when we show up as ourselves, right? When we show up authentically as ourselves. And if you're able to understand who you are fundamentally, in particular, the gift, the natural and learned gifts and talents that you have been blessed with, and we all have them. In fact, we have them in multitudes, so not just one. We have them in many spaces, and we hone them over time. We go to school, we do, we have different experiences, we build knowledge and skills and experience and all of those things. And if you're able to bring all of that to bear into your career with intention, you are going to be at your best level of performance. You're going to be at your most joyful, your most fulfilled, your most purposeful. And the combination of that means that you show up in the best way possible, such that you add value in a way that increases your ability to demand the value that you want. And so the blend of that is simply, hey, get to know yourself so well, build your career with that in mind, with who you are in mind. Don't follow anybody else's train. Do the thing, make the best part of you or most of your job, right? Show up in that way. So be authentically you, build a career around yourself, but also be somebody who goes into a space and adds value in the best way possible. And adding value just means generating relevant results. So when you go there, you're not just occupying a seat, you're actually making a difference. Sometimes value is helping them make more money. Sometimes value is helping them reduce costs. Sometimes value is bringing a different vibe and flavor and culture into the workplace, right? For me, one thing that has stood out to me in my career is I'm somebody who brings peace and energy into my office. I can get there and there will be turmoil. Within 6 months of the time I'm there, all the difficult people in that team will leave. It's happened time and time again. When I've moved like internal teams or whatever, the troublemakers in that team, they have to go. So I know that that's something that I think my spirit fights them, and so they might have been there causing problems all that time. The moment I come in, there's something about my spirit that chases them away. So they feel like it's no longer, they cannot, that place is not hospitable for them anymore. So they bounce, and then everybody will now be okay. So I've seen that so many times. So I know that that's one of the value adds. Like if you have a troublesome team, if I come in, everybody will align or they will leave. So value can look like that, like building good culture, all of that good stuff. And those are all things that the moment you're someone who adds value, people want to keep you around. You start getting more, more opportunities. You start earning more money. You start growing your career. You get the opportunities to build your skills, right? And so that's been my experience at work. And as much as, I think I always classify myself as a high performer, especially academically. When I came into the world of work, I struggled. My first few years, I was just like, what is all of this? And I think in particular, I struggled because for the first time I had to niche. All my life I'd done 20,000 things at the same time, and then suddenly I was like, this is your job, it's just your one job, and I didn't really know how to deal with that. So I think the niching down and just being so focused took a lot out of me, and then also I was just trying to navigate the workplace. But over the years, I think sort of the seeds and the things that have been instilled in me were pretty much what I wrote in Visible Strengths. That, build a career around your strengths. That's the way you're going to be the most purposeful, the most productive, and the most profitable in your career. That's pretty, yeah.
And how do people identify their strengths? And the reason I'm asking is because I think this is the bread and butter of what I'm about as well. Helping people. I call it superpower strengths, core strengths, all of that. Helping people find that harness
Yeah.
so that they can manifest in the world as the most, as the highest version of themselves. But if someone's listening to this now and wants to take away
Mm-hmm.
some maybe key principles that, what would you say? What's the minimum that, women, men, whoever is listening should be doing to identify their gifts, their strengths?
That's true. Okay. It's a good question. Look, invisible strengths, I talk about three key ways, and I think even when you research other methodologies, they tend to fall into this. So I would generally say, like, start with a level of introspection. We usually don't have language, but we know who we are fundamentally, and just really sit with yourself. I think one thing that's always lacking with us is that a lot of people, we don't actually spend enough time with ourselves. We spend time with family, we spend time with kids, we spend time with but we don't sit with ourselves with a glass of wine and actually process our own thoughts, because it's just sometimes a bit overwhelming. But I always say, introspect, and if it's helpful, then introspect in a framework. And so I provide readers of Visible Strengths a framework where I say, hey, if you want to really think about your strengths, and sometimes it feels overwhelming, write it in this way. Write three things that is what you consider my knowledge bank. This is what I know, and that can be my qualifications, things I studied, so on and so forth. Then write your attributes. This is like the words that people you would describe yourself with. I am a leader, I am, I'm funny, I'm humorous, I'm creative, whatever is that. Those are common words that we know. Then write your skills. So write things that are not just head knowledge, but that you can actually do. So if you can braid hair, if you can make a cake, if you can, you can code, things that, basically skills that you can do with your hands. Then write your experience, write everything that you've done, but not just the things you've done professionally. Think the things that you've done personally. Like, we always underestimate some of those things, like, our ability to organize. If you're the person in your family who's always doing the event planning, or if you're the person that they always call for budgeting, like, what are we going to do with this money? Or they always calling for advice. Then you might, that might be leaning into the fact that you've got wisdom and good counsel. It could be leaning into the fact that you've got good financial management. There are lots of things that kind of tell stories. So thinking about your experience broadly, not just about like work experience specifically, and then just consider things that you're interested in. What are things that you incite curiosity in you? So when you read the news, which news would you stop on, right? And pay more attention to. Which problems, if you're talking about something in church, where do you turn off and where do you tune up? Just being a lot more aware of things like that. So that's a framework I share in the book. It's called Kashi. And I would say, just sit with yourself and just write a few things in each of those buckets. That will at least give you a good start. So beyond introspection, then I would then say, okay, then look outside of yourself. Ask other people, because sometimes we have blind spots. In fact, not like sometimes, we all have blind spots, because there's a lot of things that we do naturally that we wouldn't even consider a strength because it's so natural to us, but other people will see it. And so I provide a series of questions that you can should ask other people, even just simple questions like, what 3 words will you use to describe me? Or, my personal favorite is one where I always say, what problem would you be having for me to be your first phone call? And your friends will tell you that. Your friends will be like, because we all have friends who are like that. Like, I'm not the friend they're going to call to go to Ibiza. Definitely not. But if you're trying to go to a women's conference, or you're going for
That is so funny.
or you're going for one, something serious minded, yeah, I will be the friend. So I have my friends know me for that. Like, I will not be. I will be in their
so
top
funny?
10 list. Maybe.
You know,
Maybe if they've exhausted their top 10 list, they will now just say, do you want to go? Just by chance.
you know what? Do you know what's so funny,
They
Mary? Please, I don't mind. I'm really sorry to stop you, because that was an actual thing for me. Someone called me and said, "Let's go to Ibiza," and I was like,
huh?
"Huh?" I was like, "No, I'm sorry." I'm not going.
You might have been phone call number 11, girl.
Exactly.
Not top 3, but you might have been phone call 11. So I'm like, eventually they might reach me, but So I have friends. One of my friends called me and said, oh, she's going to, because she just got married and she wanted to do like washing of the feet. So you know there's this tradition where they wash, especially in Yoruba culture, wash the feet. And I was the one she took along with her. I'm like, well, because she knows that
when
as
it's
the responsible one,
something serious,
she knows that I understand tradition. I would do, so they're just certain friends that you just know, hey, this person's going to be on time, they're going to be prompt, I'm not going to be looking for them, they're going to take initiative, they're going to be serious, but they're going to show up. So I am that friend, and so I know that my friends come, but that's telling of my strengths, right? So when your friends tell you that, that's telling of my strengths. If you are the Ibiza friend, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just know that maybe your strengths are like energy and, having a good time, creating experiences. That's who you are, right? And there's no right or wrong answers. I think it's just understanding that. So just asking people questions as well. So whether it's your friends, your family, your colleagues at work, your mentors, your teachers, you can basically create surveys and go out into the world and just, ask some of these questions. I think that's always a helpful way. And then the final one that I recommend is, going the scientific route, right? Doing personality tests and strength assessments and things like that. And I recommend a number of them in the book. And those really just, they bring science into it, but again, it's subject to garbage in, garbage out. However you answer the questions is what it gives back to you. So as long as you're being honest, what it's taking and where you're benefiting is that it's taking like a whole world of data points and putting it to say, hey, people who answer this question like this are more likely to be like that. And the questions kind of they ask the same question in multiple different ways so that they can catch out any inconsistencies and things like that. So those are grounded in science. And, A plus B is always, 1 plus 1 is always 2, right? And I think, sometimes the things that we, how we think about ourselves and how others think about us are really subjective, whereas science kind of, creates a more sort of objective view of things that helps you balance out, so even just by going through the sort of 3 methodologies, you would get a much better sense. And I think the other thing that I love psychometric assessments for is that it gives you language.
That's what I was going to say. I was just waiting for you to. Language is the thing for me.
But it's there, but you don't know what word to use. But when you read a report from it literally looks like that the thing is reading your soul, and it's just saying, sometimes it will give you like a list of your strengths. It will tell you where people who are like you are likely to be most successful or have been successful in the past. It will tell you where some of your blind spots might be and how they could be derailers for your strengths. And, maybe places to avoid as well. How you can be more intentional about using your strengths at work or in business or in other things. It talks about, how you can leverage your strengths in your relationships to be a better friend or family member or whatever other, space that you're occupying. So I particularly love psychometric assessments. But I also think that beyond that, there's something innate in you that kind of tells you a little bit about who you are. And of course, like, let's not leave out prayer. I'll put that in the introspection camp as well. It's just, just really asking God to just show me who you've made me to be, right? Ultimately, he's the writer of the manual. And so just kind of saying, hey, I have glimpses and a sense of who I am so far, but really like show me, in a way that, I can't even I can't fathom right now, but just show me who you've created me to be or who you're grooming me to be. So then that way I just have a better sense. So yes, I think those are sort of some areas that you can triangulate around. Yeah.
So good. And it's interesting because I did all of that in the lockdown, and that was how I literally, mine was, I got on a Zoom call and I got people to just give me a 360, my closest friends.
Yeah.
What did you say? Exactly the same questions you asked. And Mary, you are my soul sister. Thank you for being on this podcast. Yes. It felt just like two sisters just chilling and having a chat. I enjoy that way too much. Thank you so much for being on the
No, it's my
podcast.
pleasure.
Where can my people find you? Where can they find your book? And please just feel free to share as we wrap up.
All the things. So I am on Instagram at Mary Moshokbe _ Adeyemi. Yeah, I think if you just put in Mary Moshokbe, it will start popping out.
I'll put it in the show notes.
So yeah, so I'm usually on Instagram. I'm probably in one story or the other. I try. I'm active but not active. I'm one of those active, not active kind of people. I don't post every day, but I'm always on Instagram at some point. So I read messages and the like. And then yeah, all of my business handles and stuff are also there, and they're piling up. But effectively, my career academy is called Visible Strengths Co. And the talk show is called Visibility, and so those have their own sort of individual pages. I'm also always in my LinkedIn, so if you look for me, Mary Adeyemi on LinkedIn, I'm always there as well. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to connecting. If you want to get Visible Strengths is available on Amazon predominantly, so wherever you are in the world you can order on Amazon. If you're in Nigeria, we've partnered with Roving Heights in Nigeria, and so you can pick it up in Roving Heights stores or buy online on Roving Heights, their websites. They will deliver it to your home or wherever you are. And yeah, so beyond that, I think that's kind of it.
Absolute pleasure. Fantastic show. Thank you for bringing all of yourself and living your essence and imprinting your essence on us. Thank you. We thoroughly enjoyed that. God bless you. And yeah, we'll see you around.
God bless you too. Thank you for having me. Bye, guys.